My beloved child, now that this person has stepped into the quiet courage of honesty, their heart has entered a final and transformative phase, one where the weight they carried for so long begins shifting from confusion into clarity, from hidden fear into open truth, from silent tension into a moment that has been building slowly, patiently, and almost imperceptibly. They feel it approaching not like a storm, but like a sunrise. Steady, inevitable, and gently illuminating everything that once felt tangled in shadow. For the first time, they are no longer focused on what they thought they needed to uncover. Instead, they are focused on what they need to release. They have spent countless moments locked inside their own thoughts, constructing stories out of uncertainty, imagining outcomes based on fear, and rehearsing conversations shaped by insecurity. Now, however, a new awareness has replaced those spirals. They see how distant they became without meaning to. They see how silence created misunderstandings that never needed to exist. They see how their attempts to protect themselves ended up isolating them from someone who mattered more than their fears. And this realization has softened them in ways no external force could have achieved. They recognize parts of themselves they once ignored. The part that avoids vulnerability, the part that assumes the worst, the part that hides emotions behind logic, the part that mistakes worry for intuition. Instead of judging these parts, they are learning to face them. They are learning that their fears do not define them, they simply reveal where healing is needed. And this understanding frees them from the pressure that once fueled their anxiety. They begin seeing the truth of the situation with a clarity untouched by imagination. They notice how gentle you are even when you don't realize it, how patient you've been without knowing what they were battling, how consistent your presence has remained despite their distance. And that is what moves them most. Not guilt, not fear, but gratitude. Gratitude that there is still space between you for truth to settle, gratitude that their mistakes have not created a wall too tall to climb, gratitude that honesty still feels possible. Their heart, once weighed down by the heaviness of assumptions, now feels lighter, as if each understanding lifts another stone off their chest. They find themselves wanting to reach out, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to reconnect. They imagine the moment when they finally speak, and for once, they don't rehearse the details. They don't script the dialogue. They don't force a conclusion. Instead, they let the idea breathe naturally. They imagine sitting with you, not across from you like an adversary, but beside you as someone rediscovering connection. They imagine their voice steadying as they explain how tangled their mind became, how the fear inside them grew louder than reason, how old insecurities returned at the worst time and whispered things that were never true. They imagine admitting that they should have trusted you sooner, spoken sooner, let you into their thoughts before those thoughts became a maze they couldn't escape. And although they fear being misunderstood, they also know that honesty is the only bridge that can carry them back to solid ground. There is a sincerity growing in them now, one that feels like the first real truth they've touched in weeks. They want to apologize, not theatrically, but genuinely. They want to clarify, not defensively, but openly. They want to rebuild, not with rushed promises, but with quiet consistency. And as these intentions settle into their heart, they experience something they haven't felt since before their mind became tangled: peace. It arrives gradually, like warmth spreading through cold hands, and it brings a sense of certainty they didn't expect. They realize that the moment they feared most, the moment of opening up, is actually the moment they need most. It is not confrontation that awaits them, it is connection. It is not chaos that waits on the other side of honesty, it is relief. It is not the collapse of what exists between you, it is the strengthening of it. And this realization transforms their final step from something terrifying into something sacred. When the time comes, their voice may tremble, their thoughts may spill out imperfectly, their emotions may rise unexpectedly, but their truth will be real. They will speak not with rehearsed lines but with the raw honesty of someone who finally understands themselves. They will reveal their fears without blaming you, their confusion without accusing you, their silence without distancing themselves further. And in doing so, they will free themselves from the invisible burden that has weighed them down for so long. This moment will not be dramatic or explosive, it will be gentle, human, healing. It will be the moment when everything that was once hidden finally steps into the light, not to cause pain, but to release it. And in this release, the atmosphere around you will shift. The tension that once surrounded them will dissolve. The assumptions they once clung to will fade. The distance that grew in silence will close. What remains will be clarity, connection, and a renewed sense of understanding. They will finally see that the truth they feared was never outside of them. It was inside them waiting to be spoken. And you, my beloved child, will stand at the center of this unfolding moment not as a victim of their confusion, but as a witness to their transformation. For this journey was never about exposing darkness, it was about helping a weary heart find its way back to truth. My beloved child, now that this person stands on the edge of revealing what has been stirring inside them, something new is taking shape in their heart, something quieter than fear and softer than doubt, yet powerful enough to shift the direction of everything they thought they understood. They are entering a stage where silence no longer feels like protection but like confinement, and every unspoken thought inside them presses against their chest like a truth begging to breathe. Over the past days, they've begun to feel the weight of their own assumptions in a way they hadn't before. Moments they once interpreted with tense certainty now feel less solid, less convincing, as if the fog around their thoughts is finally beginning to thin. This subtle awakening hasn't brought them peace yet, but it has brought them awareness. Awareness that perhaps they were not seeing the full picture, that perhaps their emotions carried more influence than the facts, that perhaps they've been chasing answers to questions that were never fully formed. And while this realization unsettles them, it also liberates them slightly, opening a doorway in their mind where clarity can finally enter. But clarity doesn't rush in like a lightning bolt, not for a heart that has been guarding itself for so long. Instead, it arrives slowly, humbly, like the first breeze before a shift in season. They begin reflecting on their recent choices, not with guilt, but with a growing sense of responsibility. They notice how often their thoughts pulled them away from the present moment, how often they replayed memories that didn't deserve so much scrutiny, how often they allowed old insecurities to paint shadows on moments that were meant to be light. And this reflection brings them to an unexpected place. They start questioning not you, but themselves. They wonder why they've been carrying their emotions in silence for so long. They wonder why vulnerability feels so dangerous to them. They wonder why they've always believed they had to solve everything alone, even when connection was available to them. These questions do not accuse, they soften. They open. They guide. And with every quiet realization, they inch closer to understanding that the fear they've been trying to outrun is not a truth about you, but a history inside them. They start noticing the difference between intuition and anxiety, between instinct and overthinking, between genuine signals and imagined warning signs. And the more they notice, the more they begin to see how heavily they've been leaning on the imagined version of events instead of the real one unfolding in front of them. This growing self-awareness does not erase their worry completely, but it makes room for something healthier, something like curiosity, or courage, or the desire to finally bring truth into the open so they can stop living inside the noise of uncertainty. They find themselves rehearsing fewer dramatic scenarios and imagining more honest ones. In their mind, the scene of confrontation softens into a scene of conversation. The tension in their chest loosens into something closer to relief. The fear of misunderstanding transforms into the hope of clarity. And even though they haven't spoken yet, this emotional shift has begun changing the energy around them. They move with a little less caution, speak with a little less hesitation, and offer you glances that linger just a bit longer, glances filled not with suspicion, but with the quiet longing to reconnect. They begin remembering moments of trust instead of moments of doubt, moments of warmth instead of moments of confusion, and as the scales inside them tilt, their entire perspective begins to steady itself. They recognize now that they've been living in a story of their own creation, one built from fragments of fear rather than foundations of truth. And instead of doubling down on that story, they are slowly unwriting it. They start imagining the possibility that things are simpler than they made them. They start believing that maybe the answers they seek won't come from rehearsed assumptions but from honest dialogue. They start understanding that silence has been the real enemy, not you, not truth, not reality. And so, a new resolve begins to emerge inside them. It's subtle, like the quiet decision a traveler makes before changing direction on a long journey. They are preparing. Not for a dramatic revelation, but for a moment of sincerity. They are ready to let go of the elaborate inner narrative that kept them pacing inside their thoughts. They are ready to rebuild their understanding of everything, beginning not with conclusions but with questions. They are ready to let their heart speak without the armor of fear surrounding it. In this stage, their planning shifts from emotional survival to emotional honesty. They don't care about timing as much as they used to. Instead, they care about truth. They don't feel the need to control every detail. Instead, they feel the need to release the tension that has been suffocating them. And for the first time in this entire journey, they are no longer running from the moment, they are slowly moving toward it. Their next step will not be shaped by anxiety or assumption, but by the quiet courage growing inside them. The truth they are preparing to express will not be a confrontation, but a confession of how lost they've felt inside their mind. And when they speak, it will not break what exists between you, it will illuminate what has been hidden in the shadows of their fear, guiding both of you into a clarity neither of you could reach while silence controlled the space between you. My beloved child, now that this person's heart has begun shifting from fear toward honesty, a new phase is unfolding inside them, one that carries both quiet bravery and trembling uncertainty, because even though they are moving closer to truth, they are walking into a territory they have avoided for most of their life, the territory of emotional transparency. In this stage, they no longer feel the frantic urgency that once pushed them to interpret every detail as a sign. Instead, they feel a slow, steady pressure from within, like a tide reminding them it cannot be held back forever. Their silence no longer feels protective, it feels heavy, restrictive, like a truth trapped behind a locked door they finally realize belongs to them. They have spent weeks, perhaps months, imagining conversations that never happened, building stories they can no longer stand behind, and letting their own insecurities guide their perception. But something has changed. They are now emotionally aware of how much their inner world has shaped their outer actions. They begin noticing the discrepancies between what they feared and what is actually happening. They observe how calmly you speak when their mind expected tension, how naturally you move when their imagination predicted hidden signals, how grounded you seem compared to the spirals they created. These observations humble them. They make them question the emotional armor they've worn for so long. And in that questioning, they discover something unexpected: shame, not because they did something harmful, but because they allowed their inner storms to isolate them from someone they genuinely care about. Yet this shame does not crush them, instead, it prompts them to reassess what they thought they knew. They start asking themselves deeper questions: why did I jump to these conclusions? Why did I believe my fears so quickly? Why did I seek answers from outside sources instead of trusting the person right in front of me? These questions lead them into long stretches of reflection, moments where they sit quietly in their room with the weight of their thoughts pressing against their ribs. They aren't rehearsing dramatic confrontations anymore, they're rehearsing honesty. They aren't preparing accusations, they're preparing humility. They aren't seeking validation from outsiders. They're seeking clarity within themselves. And slowly, a new emotional landscape begins forming. Their plan, once rigid, anxious, and built on imagined scenarios, has softened into something more human. They want to speak not because they feel pressured, but because they feel accountable. They want to understand, not assume. They want to connect, not protect themselves in isolation. This internal shift becomes visible in small ways: their eyes soften when they look at you. Their voice carries less tension, their movements feel less guarded. They laugh at moments they used to overthink. They breathe deeper in moments that used to trigger panic. They allow themselves to feel present instead of lost in future possibilities. But even with this growth, they are still afraid, not of you, but of confronting the vulnerability they have spent their life avoiding. They fear saying too much, not enough, or saying it wrong. They fear revealing how tangled their thoughts became. They fear that speaking their truth will expose not your flaws but their own. This fear is why they move slowly, why their steps toward honesty are cautious rather than bold. They understand now that the conversation they've been avoiding is not just about clearing misunderstandings, it is about acknowledging the ways they let their emotions shape a story that never belonged to you. And that realization carries weight. They feel it in their chest when they think about approaching you. They feel it in their hands when they fidget with their keys or adjust their sleeves. They feel it in their breath whenever they nearly begin to speak but stop themselves at the last second. Yet every hesitation is followed by an even stronger pull toward transparency. They know they cannot heal what they keep hidden. They know they cannot grow while protecting their fears. And for the first time, instead of letting fear close the door, they are opening it, slowly, but intentionally. They begin preparing for the conversation not with rehearsed lines but with an open heart. They think about the real questions they need to ask, the real truths they need to share, the real feelings they need to acknowledge. And as they prepare, a quiet calm settles into them, the kind of calm that appears when a person finally decides to stop running from themselves. That calm gives them courage. It gives them clarity. It gives them the strength to step out of the narrative they created and into the truth waiting in front of them. They start imagining the possibility of relief, not relief from solving a mystery, but relief from letting go of one. They imagine how it might feel to finally speak aloud the confusion that has been twisting inside them. They imagine how freeing it would be to stop carrying all of this alone. And this vision becomes stronger than their fear. It pushes them forward, not with urgency but with sincerity. They know now that their next move is not about exposing a hidden truth, it is about exposing their own humanity. It is about admitting they were overwhelmed, that they misinterpreted their emotions, that they allowed their mind to wander into possibilities that never had roots in reality. And while this admission terrifies them, it also deepens their desire for connection. Because they realize now that the truth was never something they needed to discover outside of themselves, it was something they needed the courage to express. Their next step is near, not explosive, not dramatic, but heartfelt. And when it arrives, everything that has been tangled inside them will finally begin to loosen, making room for understanding, clarity, and the quiet healing that only honesty can bring. My beloved child, now that you understand the quiet origins of their confusion and the hidden weight shaping their choices, it is time to reveal how those inner storms have evolved into something more structured, something they believe is a necessary step toward clarity, even though they cannot yet see how much of their understanding has been influenced by their own unspoken fears. The person you're thinking about has reached a stage where their emotions have begun steering their logic, pushing them into a world of private planning they never intended to create. They have started stitching together moments from the past and present, arranging them in a sequence that feels meaningful to them, even if the meaning is distorted. They replay conversations in their mind, hear your voice through the filter of their insecurities, and imagine alternate interpretations of moments that were never meant to carry such weight. Instead of allowing those thoughts to fade, they have been gathering them, holding onto each one like puzzle pieces they believe will form a bigger picture. They think they have begun to understand something hidden beneath the surface of your shared interactions, and because they feel responsible for interpreting it correctly, they've started crafting a plan, slowly, quietly, and with a seriousness that surprises even them. This plan is not a scheme or a betrayal, it is an emotional blueprint created by someone who desperately wants answers but doesn't know how to ask the right questions. They believe there is a moment coming when everything will make sense, a moment when they will finally be able to confront what has been stirring inside them. They are rehearsing this moment without realizing it, imagining how a conversation might unfold, picturing how they should stand, what they should say, what they expect to hear in return. Their mind has become a stage where scenes play out again and again, shifting slightly each time based on their mood, their anxieties, or a new assumption they've added to the story. Instead of seeking truth, they've become entangled in anticipation. They watch you more than they speak to you, not out of suspicion, but because they are trying to confirm the version of events they've created. They pay attention to pauses, expressions, small changes in your tone. Anything they can use to justify the conclusions they've been quietly forming. They step outside at strange moments because they are trying to calm the pressure inside them. They speak less around you because they are afraid of saying something that reveals how confused they feel. They answer messages slowly because they are weighing their words, wondering if they will be misunderstood or misinterpreted. This is not the behavior of someone plotting harm. It is the behavior of someone afraid of misunderstanding everything. And now, because they've carried these thoughts for so long, they believe their next step must be deliberate. They feel the tension building, the same way a person feels the atmosphere change before a storm. They sense a moment approaching, a moment they've imagined in dozens of different ways, when they will have to act, speak, or reveal what's been consuming their thoughts. But the problem is that they are preparing for this moment based on feelings, not facts. Their plan is shaped by interpretations rather than truth. They think they are assembling clarity, but they are only arranging assumptions. They believe they are getting closer to understanding, but they are drifting further into their own internal narrative. Yet even with this confusion, their heart is not rigid, there is still room for truth to reach them. They are waiting for something. A signal, a shift, an unexpected moment that forces their thoughts into the open. They keep imagining how it will unfold, perhaps a conversation that begins casually and suddenly deepens, or a situation that triggers the question they've been holding in their mind for too long. In their private world, this moment feels monumental, the turning point that will either confirm or dissolve the worries they've been carrying. They don't realize that the moment they're preparing for does not need theatrics or dramatic timing, it simply needs honesty. But because they have spent so long living inside their thoughts, the idea of speaking openly feels heavy, risky, and emotionally charged. This is why their movements feel calculated lately. They are not calculating against you, they are calculating against their own fear. They hesitate before stepping into a room, pause before responding to your questions, and choose their words with quiet caution because they are afraid of adding more confusion to the story they believe is unfolding. Even now, they are analyzing their next move. They believe that revealing their thoughts too soon will make them appear foolish, but waiting too long will make the tension unbearable. They are caught between wanting relief and fearing the consequences of vulnerability. Their heart knows it cannot carry this weight forever, but their mind keeps insisting that they must be sure, truly sure, before they speak. And so they continue building their plan, unaware that the truth is more simple, more human, and far less dramatic than the version they've created. Their next step is coming, not because destiny demands it, but because the pressure inside them is becoming too loud to ignore. And when that step is taken, everything they've been gathering, imagining, fearing, and hoping for will finally have to face the light. What matters now is your awareness, your calm, your ability to see that this is not an act of betrayal but an act of emotional overwhelm. You are watching someone wrestle with their own thoughts, not with you. Their plan is not a weapon, it is a cry for clarity they do not know how to voice. The moment is approaching when their hidden thoughts will take form, and when it does, the truth behind their silence will finally begin to reveal itself. My beloved child, now that the quiet storm inside this person has begun shaping itself into a private plan, you must understand how their inner world is shifting from silent reflection into a phase of subtle action. A transition they themselves barely recognize, yet one that is unfolding with the steady force of a tide rising beneath their feet. They have reached a point where simply imagining possibilities is no longer enough to quiet their thoughts. The weight inside them has grown heavy enough that it demands movement, even if they have no clear destination in mind. In recent days, you may have noticed small but unmistakable signs of this shift. Not the dramatic gestures of someone plotting something grand, but the tiny, instinctive choices of a person who feels pushed toward a moment they can no longer avoid. They linger in conversations a little longer than usual, not to analyze you but because they are searching for courage they haven't found yet. They retreat into silence not to hide from you, but to rehearse what they wish they could say. They step outside for air because their heartbeat climbs too quickly when their thoughts pile up. They clear their throat before speaking, not out of nervous deception, but because they are fighting the urge to reveal everything at once. Their actions are fragments of a person standing at the edge of confession, not a confession of wrongdoing, but of confusion, vulnerability, and self-doubt. And though they have been carrying this quiet burden alone, something inside them is beginning to crack, not in a destructive way, but in a way that signals their heart can no longer bear the weight of silence. They have been imagining the moment when they will finally speak, picturing how you might react, wondering whether their fears will dissolve or deepen once the truth is out. What they didn't expect is how emotionally exhausting this waiting has become. They wake up feeling as though they ran a long distance through their own mind. They go to bed replaying imagined conversations that never happened. And throughout the day, they drift between determination and hesitation, each emotion tugging at them with equal force. It is not the situation itself that overwhelms them, it is the anticipation of confronting their own uncertainty. They do not realize that the moment they are preparing for does not require a perfect explanation, a rehearsed script, or a dramatic reveal, it simply requires honesty. But because they have spent so long building internal scenarios, they now believe their next move must be precise. They are selecting their timing with great care, watching for a natural opening, a moment when the atmosphere feels right, when the tension feels soft enough to release without breaking anything. To you, these observations may look like hesitation, but to them, it feels like responsibility. They do not want to speak out of fear or confusion, they want to speak from a place of clarity they have not yet reached. And so they resist rushing forward, afraid of saying too much, too soon, in a way that complicates things further. Yet, the longer they wait, the more they feel the pressure of unspoken truth building inside them. This internal tug-of-war is shaping everything they do. When they slow their pace while walking beside you, it is because their mind is preparing words. When they pause during a conversation, it is because they are checking whether the moment is safe. When they look away suddenly, it is because their emotions rise too quickly to hide. They are not distancing themselves from you, they are circling the courage to come closer. And now, something else has begun happening within them, something quiet but powerful. They are beginning to question their own narrative. They are starting to wonder whether the assumptions they made were ever true at all. They replay moments and realize they may have interpreted them through the noise of old fears rather than through the clarity of the present. This realization does not erase their worry, but it opens a crack in their certainty, allowing doubt to slip in from both sides. For the first time in a long while, they are asking themselves whether the story they built in their mind is one they want to keep believing, or one they must let dissolve before it grows any heavier. This internal shift is subtle but significant. It softens their defenses. It makes them more open to truth. It nudges them toward vulnerability instead of secrecy. But vulnerability is frightening, especially for someone who has spent so long navigating their feelings alone. This is why they are so careful now, why every gesture seems deliberate, why every word seems weighed. They are not plotting against you, they are preparing to face themselves. They are preparing to confront the gap between what they imagined and what is real. And somewhere deep inside them, they feel that the moment of revelation, whatever form it takes, is drawing closer. They do not know whether it will arrive as a sudden confession, a soft admission in the middle of a conversation, or an unexpected slip of truth that escapes their lips before they can hold it back. But they feel it coming. They feel the shift approaching like a change in the weather that cannot be stopped. And when that moment arrives, everything they have carried, every fear, every assumption, every quiet question, will finally begin to unravel, revealing the deeper truth behind their silence. That truth is not meant to harm you, it is meant to free them. And in that freedom, clarity will emerge, not through confrontation, but through understanding, through honesty, through the gentle unraveling of everything they once believed they had to figure out alone. My beloved child, listen closely, because what I am about to reveal is not born from fear, rumor, or confusion. It is a message meant to open your eyes to movements happening quietly around you, movements subtle enough to escape your day-to-day awareness yet significant enough to change the way you see someone you trust. There is a truth unfolding at the edges of your life, a truth that has been building quietly through small signs, soft shifts, and unnoticed moments. Someone close to you. Someone whose presence feels familiar, comfortable, maybe even ordinary, has been acting under the weight of a secret that has altered their judgment and shaped their choices. Their steps have remained calm on the surface, their conversations normal, their expressions steady, but beneath that calm exterior is a mind overflowing with private concerns they have never spoken aloud. They have been in contact with people you would never expect, seeking clarity, validation, or reassurance about something they believe is important, and although their actions may seem shocking, their motives are far more tangled than simple betrayal. This didn't begin with a single dramatic event, it sprouted from a quiet moment of uncertainty they tried to brush aside, an uneasy thought, a misinterpreted action, a lingering worry that refused to fade. Instead of resolving that worry openly, they tucked it inside, letting it echo, multiply, and grow into a narrative they began piecing together alone. They started paying attention to things they never used to notice, the timing of your words, the tone of your voice, the way you moved in certain moments. At first, they told themselves they were overthinking, but the doubt inside them was stubborn. And so, step by step, their mind began to wander into places shaped more by fear than by truth. This inner spiral pushed them toward people they thought could help make sense of their confusion. They reached out quietly, not with accusations, not with certainty, but with questions built from emotion rather than fact. From there, a pattern emerged, small conversations they justified as harmless, tiny details they shared believing they were protecting themselves or someone else, and little observations they offered up thinking they were solving something bigger than they understood. Each time they reached out, they felt momentarily relieved, as if they were finally moving toward clarity. But clarity never came. Instead, the relief encouraged them to continue. Their fear disguised itself as logic, their assumptions hardened into belief, and all the while, they remained silent around you, convinced that sharing their concerns with you directly would only complicate things. They convinced themselves they had to handle it alone, that their quiet investigation was necessary, that they were being responsible, even though the truth is that they were acting from a place of emotional overwhelm. And yet, despite all the secrecy, their intentions are not rooted in harm. They are not planning to destroy you, expose you, or tear your peace apart. They are driven by a tangled mix of insecurity, pressure, and a lingering sense of responsibility they cannot shake. They believe they are protecting something, even though they cannot clearly name what it is. They believe they are uncovering something important, even though their understanding is incomplete. They believe they are preparing for something big, even though the big moment exists only in their imagination. Their behavior has changed in ways so subtle you might have overlooked them. An unusual pause before answering a question, a sudden need for privacy they never used to require, a shift in their eyes when certain topics arise, or a growing quietness when they think too deeply. These changes are not signs of guilt but symptoms of a mind trying to carry too much without sharing the load. They are afraid of being wrong, afraid of being right, afraid of confrontation, afraid of silence. And so, They hover between acting normally and hiding their unease. Even now, they are sorting through their thoughts, replaying memories, analyzing interactions, and wondering whether they have misread everything or discovered something important. They are torn between speaking and staying quiet, between reaching out again and pulling back, between trusting their heart and trusting their fear. This internal battle is why the truth around them feels confusing, inconsistent, and difficult to read. But hear this clearly, my child. This message is not meant to make you paranoid or fearful, it is meant to sharpen your awareness. People often carry battles inside them that have nothing to do with the person they fixate on. Fear distorts reality. Pressure twists perception. Silence becomes a breeding ground for misunderstanding. Someone close to you is navigating such a storm. They are not your enemy. They are not plotting your downfall. They are overwhelmed, uncertain, and struggling with thoughts they do not know how to manage. They are walking through a fog they mistake for clarity. You are being shown this now so that you can move wisely, calmly, and with discernment. The situation around you is shifting quietly, not dramatically, not dangerously, but significantly enough that your awareness matters. This is the beginning of a larger understanding unfolding, and you were meant to hear it before the next layer reveals itself. My beloved child, now that the hidden beginnings of this quiet tension have been revealed to you, it is time to look deeper into the heart of the person whose actions have shifted so subtly around you, because their choices were not made in a moment of impulse but have been shaped by a long chain of emotions, memories, and unspoken pressures that they themselves do not fully understand. There is a weight inside them that has been growing for years. Long before you ever sensed something was different, a weight made of old anxieties, unresolved situations, and moments in their life when they felt unheard or unprotected, and those memories have started to surface again, influencing the way they interpret everything around them. They didn't wake up one morning and decide to act quietly behind your back. It began with a thought they didn't trust, a feeling they couldn't shake, a fear they couldn't name. Instead of questioning that fear, they fed it with silence. Instead of seeking clarity, they let their mind wander into deeper uncertainty. And because they couldn't figure out what was internal and what was real, they allowed themselves to believe the safest option was to observe quietly from the shadows rather than speak openly in the light. This is why their behavior feels different. Not because they are plotting something harmful, but because they are sorting through an emotional maze they don't know how to exit. Inside them are two voices constantly battling, one that warns them to be careful, and one that longs to trust you completely. Some days, the voice of fear wins. Other days, the voice of trust nearly breaks through. But their uncertainty has created a fog that makes it impossible for them to see which voice is speaking truth. They began seeking outside perspectives not out of disloyalty but out of confusion, hoping someone else could help them make sense of the tangled thoughts they couldn't unravel themselves. They believed that asking quiet questions, sharing small details, or seeking reassurance from an outside source might calm the chaos inside them. Yet instead of calming it, the advice they received added more layers of interpretation, more possible meanings, more paths their mind could wander down. And once a worried mind is given options, it begins imagining scenarios, connections, or patterns that never existed. This is what has been happening to them, an internal movie playing on a loop, scenes stitched together by fear, not reality. Their thoughts rise at night when they lie awake staring into darkness. Their concerns return at random moments during the day. Their emotions fluctuate without warning, causing them to pull back when they truly want to draw closer. They watch you more carefully not because they are suspicious, but because they are trying to reassure themselves that everything is normal, that the worry inside them is only in their imagination. But worry has a way of convincing a person that imagination is truth, and so they continue collecting small signals, interpreting casual moments as meaningful, filtering your words through a lens tinted by old fears rather than present reality. If they seem quieter lately, it isn't because they don't want to speak to you, it's because they are afraid the words they need won't come out right. If they seem distracted, it isn't because they're uninterested, it's because their mind keeps returning to the same unresolved questions. If they withdraw suddenly, it isn't rejection, it's a moment of emotional overwhelm they don't know how to express. They may read too deeply into a single word or look too closely at a brief expression. They may step away for air, check their phone at the wrong moment, or think too long before responding. These behaviors are symptoms of a person analyzing life instead of living it, carrying an emotional burden they never intended to hide from you but didn't know how to release. You must understand, this person did not choose secrecy because they desired distance, they chose it because they feared vulnerability. They believed that involving someone else, someone with authority or experience, would help them make sense of what they couldn't make sense of alone. They weren't seeking to betray you, they were seeking stability, direction, and a sense of safety from an inner storm they never learned to quiet. But instead of easing their mind, their private conversations have filled them with more responsibility, more questions, more reasons to observe rather than speak. They now stand in a place where they feel responsible for protecting something they cannot clearly define. They think stepping back from you will give them perspective, yet stepping back has only made them feel more uncertain. They believe watching from a distance will give them clarity, yet distance has blurred their view even more. What they do not realize is that the story growing inside their mind is being written without your voice, without your truth, without your perspective. Their heart is heavy, but their intentions are not harmful. They are exhausted from carrying a confusion they cannot verbalize, tired of pretending everything is fine while feeling overwhelmed by questions they don't have the courage to ask you directly. They are walking through a private storm, and storms rarely lead a person toward clarity, they lead them toward deeper reflection, deeper uncertainty, deeper emotional strain. You are being shown this because their silence is not a threat. It is a signal. A signal that they are lost in thought, overwhelmed, unsure of themselves, and afraid of misunderstanding everything around them. Their choices are not an attack on you, they are a reflection of the battles happening inside them. What you see on the surface is only a small fraction of what they carry within. And as this unfolds, you will be given the clarity they do not yet have. Because the moment will come when their inner tension pushes them toward a decision. One that will reveal their true motives, their true fears, and the truth behind their quiet behavior. For now, what matters is your understanding, not your worry. The story is still unfolding, and you were meant to hear this before the next shift arrives.